The madness started during wedding planning, right after my brother Michael announced his engagement to Victoria and Mom decided it would be the social event of the decade. The venue alone is $200,000, Mom said excitedly, showing Dad the proposal from the Grand Meridian Hotel. But the trust fund exists for occasions like this. I looked up from my laptop where I was reviewing quarterly reports for my investment firm. $200,000 for a venue? Emma, don't be dramatic, Dad said dismissively. Michael's wedding represents the family. We need to make a statement. At 29, I'd been the family's financial disappointment for most of my adult life. While Michael earned praise for his marketing career at a mid-sized firm, I was just Emma, the antisocial daughter who worked with numbers and lived modestly while they pursued expensive lifestyles. The flowers are going to be spectacular, Victoria added, flipping through designer portfolios. We're thinking $80,000 for ceremony arrangements alone. $80,000 for flowers? I asked. Michael laughed. Emma, you don't understand luxury events. This is a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. The catering is $150,000 for 300 guests, Mom continued, plus $50,000 for the string quartet, $30,000 for photography and $25,000 for the custom cake. I did quick math in my head. You're planning a $500,000 wedding? The family trust can handle it, Dad said confidently. That's what the money is for, major family investments like marriages. What my family didn't know was that there was no family trust. What they called the trust fund was actually my personal investment account that I'd been quietly funding their lifestyle from for the past 5 years. Dad, where exactly do you think this trust fund money comes from? Family investments, generational wealth building, he said vaguely. Emma, you work in basic accounting. You wouldn't understand complex financial planning. Actually, I was Emma Patterson, founder and managing director of Patterson Capital Management, an investment firm that managed $340 million in assets for high-net-worth clients. But my family assumed I was a bookkeeper or tax preparer. The important thing, Mom said, is giving Michael and Victoria the wedding they deserve. My phone buzzed with a message from my finance director, James. Emma, unusual activity on account 4471. Someone has submitted vendor contracts totaling $500,000 for immediate payment. Need authorization. Account 4471 was the account I'd established to help family members with occasional expenses. Over 5 years, they'd withdrawn nearly $800,000 for various investments and lifestyle expenses, always believing it was some kind of family inheritance. Michael, I said carefully, have you signed any vendor contracts yet? Just the deposits, he said proudly. Dad handled all the financial arrangements through the family trust. What deposits? Victoria pulled out a folder. Venue deposit of $50,000, catering deposit of $30,000, flowers deposit of $20,000. Everything's confirmed for next month. Next month. They'd planned a $500,000 wedding for next month using money they thought came from a family trust that didn't exist. My phone rang. James calling directly. Excuse me, I said stepping into the kitchen. Emma, I'm looking at these contracts. Someone submitted authorization for a $500,000 wedding using your investment account. The signatures appear to be forged. Forged how? Someone signed your name as Emma Patterson, Trust Fund Administrator. Emma, you don't administer any trust funds. You own the account they're trying to drain. Through the kitchen window, I could see my family excitedly discussing floral arrangements that cost more than most people's annual salary. I returned to find Dad on the phone with vendors, confidently authorizing additional expenses. Yes, we'll take the premium bar package, he was saying. The trust account can cover the upgrade. Money is no object for this celebration. Dad, who are you talking to? The catering manager. We're upgrading to top-shelf liquor and adding a champagne fountain. Only adds another $40,000. Michael beamed with pride. Dad's making sure everything is perfect. This wedding is going to be legendary. Where are you getting authorization for these expenses? Mom looked at me like I was being difficult. Emma, the family trust has been building for generations. This is exactly what the money was saved for. What generations, Mom? Grandpa worked in a factory. Grandma was a secretary. Well, the account has substantial funds available, Dad said defensively. I've been monitoring the balance for years. My family had been monitoring an account that I funded monthly from my investment firm's profits, never bothering to ask where the money actually originated. How much do you think is in this trust fund? I asked. Victoria answered excitedly. Michael said there's enough for a beautiful wedding and maybe a down payment on a house afterward. A house down payment. They were planning to spend my money on real estate too. We've been very responsible with the trust funds over the years, Dad continued. Michael's education, the family vacations, Mom's boutique startup costs, all legitimate family investments. Michael's education had cost $200,000. The family vacations had totaled $150,000 over 3 years. Mom's boutique had failed after 6 months and cost $75,000. Dad, what do you think my job is? You work in bookkeeping or tax preparation, right? Something entry-level in finance. Something like that. My phone buzzed again. James sending urgent messages. Emma, more contracts arriving. Custom linens $15,000. Luxury transportation $25,000. Wedding planner fees $30,000. Total authorization requests now $610,000. This needs immediate review. Michael, I said, what happens if this trust fund doesn't have as much money as you think? He laughed confidently. Emma, Dad's been managing family finances for years. He knows exactly how much is available. Dad's been managing what exactly? The investment accounts, trust distributions, financial planning, Dad said with authority. I handle all the complex financial decisions for the family. The only financial decision Dad had been making was how to spend money I'd been secretly providing while he took credit for financial management he had no part in. Victoria's phone rang. It's the wedding planner, she said excitedly. Probably confirming tomorrow's final details meeting. Tomorrow. They had a meeting to finalize a $600,000 wedding using funds from an account they'd never actually seen statements for. Victoria, have you seen any actual bank statements for this trust fund? Dad handles all the paperwork, Michael answered. We don't need to worry about financial details. My phone rang again. James sounding urgent. Emma, I need you to come to the office immediately. These contract authorizations are creating serious problems. What kind of problems? The vendors are requesting immediate wire transfers for deposits. Someone has been representing themselves as the account administrator and promising payments that would drain your personal investment account. How much total? Over $600,000. Emma, if these transfers go through, it could trigger federal investigations for wire fraud. The doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said. Through the security monitor, I could see James standing at the door with his briefcase and another man in an expensive suit I recognized as Richard Sterling, the federal banking compliance officer who handled our firm's regulatory requirements. I opened the door to find James looking serious and Richard looking official. Emma, we have some urgent issues with account 4471 that require immediate attention, James said. What kind of issues? Richard stepped forward. Multiple instances of unauthorized access and fraudulent authorization attempts. We need to review the account activity with all involved parties. I led them into the living room where my family was still excitedly planning their extravagant celebration. Everyone, this is James Morton, my finance director, and Richard Sterling, federal banking compliance officer. They need to discuss some issues with the account you've been using. Dad stood up confidently. Gentlemen, I'm David Patterson. I manage the family financial planning. How can I help you? James opened his briefcase and pulled out account statements. Mr. Patterson, according to our records, you're not authorized to manage any accounts. Emma Patterson is the sole owner of account 4471. Sole owner. Mom repeated weakly. Richard spread banking documents across the coffee table. This account has been funded exclusively by Patterson Capital Management, the investment firm owned and operated by Emma Patterson. Michael stared at the documents. Emma owns an investment firm? One of the most successful boutique investment management companies in the state, Richard confirmed, managing $340 million in client assets. Victoria looked confused. Emma, you told us you worked in bookkeeping. James pulled out more documents. Over 5 years, Emma has funded this account with $780,000 from her business profits. The withdrawals have funded family expenses including education, vacations, and business ventures. But the trust fund. Dad started weakly. There is no trust fund, James said firmly. This is Emma's personal account that she's been using to support family expenses. Richard consulted his tablet. Furthermore, someone has been forging Emma's signature on vendor contracts, claiming authority to spend over $600,000 for wedding expenses. Dad went pale. Forging signatures? The contracts for this wedding list Emma Patterson, trust fund administrator, as the authorizing party. Emma doesn't administer any trust funds. She owns the account someone's been attempting to drain. Michael looked sick. Emma, I had no idea this money was coming from your business. James displayed financial statements on his tablet. Patterson Capital Management has generated these funds through successful investment management for high-net-worth clients. Emma is one of the youngest investment firm owners in the state. Investment firm owner? Mom whispered. Richard's phone buzzed. Emma, I have some concerning news. The vendor payment authorizations have triggered federal wire fraud investigations. The FBI is requesting documentation on all account activity. Complete silence filled the room. FBI? Victoria asked weakly. When someone forges signatures to authorize hundreds of thousands in transfers, it constitutes federal wire fraud, Richard explained. Especially when the account owner had no knowledge of the transactions. Dad looked panicked. Emma, surely we can work this out privately. We're family. Dad, you forged my signature on $600,000 in vendor contracts for a wedding you can't afford, using money from my investment firm. James packed his documents. Emma, we need to freeze the account immediately and report all unauthorized activities to federal authorities. Within 24 hours, the wedding vendors received cancellation notices and the FBI opened an investigation into the forged contracts. Michael and Victoria's social event of the decade became a small ceremony at the local courthouse. Emma, you've ruined everything, Michael accused during a tense family meeting. All because of some paperwork technicalities. Michael, Dad committed federal crimes by forging my signature on financial documents. Those aren't technicalities. The investigation revealed that Dad had been representing himself as a trust fund administrator for years, taking credit for financial support he had no part in providing. Mom tried to explain their behavior. Emma, we had no idea you were so successful. You never told us about your investment firm. I never told you because you spent 5 years assuming I was unsuccessful without ever asking what I actually did. The local business community eventually learned about my firm's success, ending years of family assumptions about my entry-level career in finance. 6 months later, Patterson Capital Management was featured in Financial Times as one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the region. The article mentioned my family's surprise at learning about my success. Michael and Victoria had their small wedding and eventually bought a modest house with legitimate financing. Dad faced federal charges for wire fraud but received probation due to family circumstances. The account I'd used to fund their lifestyle was permanently closed. My firm's profits now went to employee profit sharing and financial literacy education programs. A year later, Michael called to apologize. Emma, I understand now how wrong we were about your career. Your investment firm is obviously incredible. Michael, my firm was always successful. Your awareness of it wasn't. The family that drained my account for a wedding they couldn't afford learned too late that their financial security had come from the daughter they dismissed as unsuccessful. Richard Sterling helped establish new compliance protocols to prevent future authorization fraud. The case became a training example for banking security procedures. Sometimes the people who take credit for your generosity are the same people who assume you're incapable of success. Sometimes the family member you dismiss as unsuccessful is actually funding your entire lifestyle. Their dream wedding needed my money more than I needed their acknowledgement.